Have you ever tried speaking to someone and while you're pouring your heart out, they're just nodding blankly? You can literally see them preparing their reply while you're still sharing your story. It feels like talking to a wall, except the wall doesn't interrupt. We live in a world where everyone wants to speak louder, faster, more often, but very few are willing to truly listen. And yet, if you want to be heard, you must first learn to hear. There is a subtle but powerful difference between reacting and responding. When we interrupt someone mid sentence, it often reveals our desire to react rather than truly understand. It shows that instead of allowing the speaker to complete their thoughts, we're too busy forming our own opinions, judgments, or counter arguments. This habit not only disrupts the natural flow of conversation, but also breaks the sacred space of trust. Imagine sitting across someone who is finally opening up about something important to them, and before they can even finish, you cut in with a, yeah, but, or I think. It's like stepping into a garden someone has carefully tended to, only to trample it in your haste to rearrange the flowers. Interrupting more than we inquire is a sign that the ego has taken the driver's seat. The ego loves the sound of its own voice, but it often forgets the value of another's experience. Inquiring, on the other hand, is rooted in humility. It means we are willing to pause our own thoughts, hold back our urge to comment, and instead ask with sincerity, "Tell me more about that," or "How did that make you feel?" These small questions carry deep weight. They show that we value what the other person is saying enough to explore it further. When we inquire, we don't just hear, we learn. And learning is impossible when we're always interrupting, because listening becomes the first casualty. More importantly, constant interruption sends a dangerous signal that our voice matters more than theirs. Over time, people start to feel dismissed, disrespected, and emotionally invisible. They might stop sharing, not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't feel safe saying it. And ironically, the one who interrupts often complains that no one listens to them. The truth is, people don't listen to those who never make room for others. If you want others to hear your voice, let them first hear your heart. Through your silence, your patience, and your sincere interest. In the garden of relationships, interrupting is like pulling out the roots before the flower has a chance to bloom. But inquiring, that's the watering the soil. There comes a point in some relationships, be it with friends, partners, family, or colleagues, where conversations start to feel unusually shallow. You begin to notice they're only sharing headlines, not the full story. You ask how they're doing, and they say fine, even when their eyes say otherwise. This subtle distance doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly, often without us noticing. People stop opening up to you not because they've suddenly become private, but because they've tried before and didn't feel seen, heard, or safe. Perhaps when they first opened up, they were met with judgment instead of empathy. Or maybe their vulnerability was brushed aside, belittled, or used against them later. And so little by little they retreat, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Because if someone feels like their truth is too heavy for us to carry, they will learn to carry it along. When someone stops sharing their inner world with us, it's not just a communication problem, it's a connection problem. And at its root lies one of the greatest human needs, to feel understood. People don't want perfect listeners. They want present ones. Listeners who don't rush to fix, compare, or shift the focus, but simply sit with them in the discomfort or joy of what they're expressing. When we repeatedly fail to hold that space, we silently train others to withhold their emotion. They begin to think, why bother? They won't get it. Or worse, they'll just make me feel worse. That's why listening is not a small act. It's sacred. If we want people to open up to us again, we must first open ourselves to the possibility that maybe we haven't been listening as well as we thought. Healing begins not by asking others to speak more, but by becoming the kind of person they feel safe speaking to. There's an old saying, the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. But if the heart is full of noise, pride, or restlessness, then so too will be our speech. When we talk more than we reflect, we begin to treat conversation like a race, as if the one who speaks fastest or most is somehow winning. But real communication isn't about volume or frequency. It's about depth. And depth doesn't come from constant talking. It comes from meaningful silence, from taking the time to pause, to digest what was said, to consider what we're about to say, and to ask ourselves why we're saying it. The tongue is light, but its consequences are often heavy. Without reflection, our words can become like arrows shot in the dark, fast, impulsive, and wounding, even if unintentional. People who talk more than they reflect often find themselves misunderstood or regretting what they've said. It's not because their hearts are impure, it's often because their mouths move faster than their minds. Think about it. How many arguments could be avoided if we just gave ourselves a few seconds of thoughtful silence before speaking? How many relationships could be healed if instead of defending ourselves, we asked, what part of this can I learn from? Reflection gives us the power to respond rather than react, to empathize rather than attack. When we slow down and look within, we realize that communication is not just about self-expression. It's about mutual growth. Every word we speak is either a bridge or a barrier. And reflection ensures that we build more bridges than we burn. Talking is easy, anyone can do it. But reflection requires humility. It's the humility to admit that we don't always have to fill the silence, that we don't always have the answer, that perhaps there's something to learn, not just something to say. In our desire to be heard, we often forget to listen, not just to others, but to ourselves. And reflection is how we listen to our own heart. It's where self-awareness is born. When we begin to reflect more than we talk, our words gain weight. They become less frequent, but more meaningful. They stop being noise and start becoming nourishment to ourselves and to those around us. Feeling misunderstood is one of the most isolating emotional experiences a person can go through. It's not just about someone misinterpreting our words. It's about the ache of not being seen for who we truly are. Many people walk through life carrying a silent question in their hearts. Why doesn't anyone get me? And in response, they speak louder, argue harder, or distance themselves. All in the hope that someone, somewhere, will understand their perspective. But here's the subtle truth. Sometimes the reason we feel constantly misunderstood is not because people aren't listening. It's because we haven't learned how to listen first. When we don't make the effort to understand others, we unknowingly teach them not to try understanding us either. And so a cycle begins. We don't feel heard, so we talk more. Others feel drowned out, so they listen less, and the gap widens. Many people believe that being heard means being agreed with. But real understanding doesn't always come with agreement. It comes with presence, with patience, with empathy. If we find ourselves often frustrated by being misread or misinterpreted, it may be time to ask ourselves, do I take the time to understand others before expecting them to understand me? Do I create a space where others feel emotionally safe to open up? Because when people feel seen and respected by us, they are far more likely to extend that same grace in return. The irony is that we often raise our voice when we feel unheard, when what's really needed is to lower our walls. We crave depth in our relationships, but depth doesn't come from demanding it. At the core of feeling misunderstood is a longing to connect, to be accepted as we are. But connection is not built on speaking more, it is built on listening deeper. When we develop the humility to step into one another's shoes, even briefly, we begin to communicate not just through words, but through compassion. And suddenly, misunderstandings become opportunities, chances to clarify, to grow, and to come close. If we truly want to be understood, we must first master the art of understanding. For in giving the gift of presence to others, we make it possible for them to offer it back to us, not out of obligation, but from a place of genuine love and trust. Sometimes, when someone is pouring their heart out to us, sharing their struggles, disappointments, or deep emotional pain, our first instinct is to fix it. We rush in with advice, solutions, and strategies, thinking we're helping. And often, our intentions are pure. We want to ease their burden, shorten their suffering, and help them move forward. But what we often fail to realize is that advice, even if it's brilliant, is not always what the heart needs. There are moments when the soul doesn't need direction, it needs connection. When someone is broken inside, telling them what to do can feel like we're overlooking how they feel. It's like handing someone a map while they're still trying to find the strength to stand up. In those vulnerable moments, what they truly need is not an answer, it's assurance. Not a lesson, but a listener. Not a... Empathy is the art of saying, I'm with you, without needing to fix anything. It's being present in another person's pain without trying to clean it up. And while advice speaks from the mind, empathy speaks from the heart. The truth is, most people already know what they should do. They just need someone to understand why it's hard. When we skip over that emotional layer and go straight into problem-solving mode, it can feel dismissive. It's like trying to silence a storm with instructions instead of offering shelter. But when we sit with someone in their pain, when we simply hold space and say, I hear you, or that must be so difficult, we create an atmosphere of healing. And ironically, it's in that gentle space of empathy that the right insights often arise naturally, not from being told what to do, but from finally feeling heard enough to figure it out themselves. In today's world of endless conversations, constant notifications, and superficial connections, it's entirely possible to be surrounded by people, yet feel emotionally alone. We often know dozens of names, share jokes, exchange texts, but when we pause to reflect, we realize that something deeper is missing. If we struggle to build meaningful relationships, it's often not because others don't care, but because we haven't learned how to truly connect. And meaningful connection begins with meaningful listening. If our conversations are always about giving our opinion, changing the subject, or steering the focus back to ourselves, people eventually stop going beyond the surface with us. Deeper relationships are not built on how much we talk, but on how well we receive. When someone feels we are not emotionally available, not present, not curious, not compassionate, they may smile in front of us, but they slowly withdraw behind the scenes. The truth is, vulnerability creates depth, and depth requires trust. And trust doesn't grow in noise. It grows in stillness, in empathy, in shared silence, in those sacred moments when we pause our own world to enter someone else's. When we fail to build deeper bonds, it's often because we've built walls instead of bridges, not out of malice, but out of habit. We listen just enough to reply, not enough to understand. We offer help before offering presence. We show care in convenience. But relationships grow only through consistency. To truly build meaningful relationships, we must learn to hold space, to let others speak without feeling rushed, to let silence stretch without filling it, and to let people feel seen, not sized up. Because depth doesn't happen by talking more. It happens by loving better. And love most often begins not with words, but with a quiet, open heart willing to listen.